3 people were killed, 2 seriously injured, and countless others affected. When we started preparing for our Cincy Strong coverage, our intention was to go back to that day. Along the way, we realized this wasn't about going back, but moving forward, sharing the stories of the survivors, celebrating those we lost, and honoring our brave first responders. That's why we won't be acknowledging the shooter or showing video of inside the lobby. We want to thank everyone who let us into their offices and their homes in hopes that we celebrate Cincinnati's strength.
What was your first inkling that you had victims?
The very first one was my approach. I saw Whitney on the ground, and she was in that revolving door, stuck.
I knew, as a person of faith, I knew where I was going. And I didn't want it to be the end. I was worried about my family, but I just, in some ways, had peace about what was going to happen. And then all of a sudden, Al came out of nowhere.
She looks at me eye to eye and says, hey, you have to help me. I'm married and I have 2 kids and I want to be a mommy again.
And I could see the fear in his eyes. It was difficult to understand or comprehend why he wasn't immediately saving me, but I now know there's protocol. You have to make sure that you eliminate the danger, you take down the shooter so that no one else can be harmed or injured.
That there's no more shots being fired. I said, this is our time. Another officer, Darren Hoderline, helped me pick her up out of the bed of glass, and then he actually took my spot, and I helped Whitney over to a marble flagpole.
Have you seen the picture of you laying on the flagpole?
Yes, it was impossible to avoid that one. It's okay. It's okay. It's what happened.
Me being a spiritual person, there was a prayer on my way there, and then a prayer that she survives this.
I'm not a physician. I don't know, what physicians know, but what I knew about my situation once I got to Al and out was that I was breathing deeply without really much difficulty, and my heart was beating strongly, and I knew that my head had not been hit and that I was making decisions and calling shots and all of that, and I thought, these are 3 really good things.
I mean, we have gloves, things that we need to put on to that, but it went straight to saving her life or trying to save her life.
They couldn't put one on my right arm because it was too badly damaged, but they put one on my left arm, and then they tried to do everything to make me comfortable. I remember they took off my shoes. I told them I couldn't sit up, it was too difficult, so they laid me back.
I asked her, is there somebody I can call for you? And she says, yes, can you call my husband?
And this is another funny moment. I remember I gave him my phone number instead of my husband's phone number. So he said, Whitney, that's your number. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, here's Waller's number.
Hey, there's been an incident in Cincinnati and your wife was involved. She's alert. She was injured in this, but she's alert and she's talking to me.
He passed the phone over to me, and back to me being focused on what I had to do to survive. I didn't even tell him I loved him. I said, I've been shot so many times, it hurts so badly, but I am breathing deeply, my heart is beating just fine, and my brain is working, so just get up here. That's all I said. I mean, I have such regrets that I didn't say more, but that is all I said.
I didn't do it all by myself. From the first caller to the call taker to the dispatcher to displaying it to the officers. To her will to live. She had a will to live.
Al is a really important person in my life.
And Whitney considers you a friend.
Whitney is Whitney. Whitney is something else. Yes, she's called me. She's sent me pictures that she wouldn't be able to have Halloween, Christmas with her kids.
Have you been back to Fountain Square?
I did go back to Fountain Square. I didn't go into the building, but I don't know that I need to because I actually never made it into the building. I only made it into the revolving door. And it was a couple of months ago, and I felt like I was making it a thing. You can't go back there. And I'm not one to not do things. So I said, you're gonna do this, you're gonna go try it. And as we started to come around and get closer to the revolving door, I got emotional, and it's just hard to describe the feeling in the pit of my stomach. So I started to think I would just back away from it. And then out of nowhere on the intercom, Whitney Houston's I Want to Dance with Somebody played. And that probably sounds really trivial and silly, but I love Whitney Houston's music. I love dancing to that song with my kids, and it was such a goosebump moment. Like, of course that's the song that's playing. You're not here to think about this revolving door and all the horrific things that happened within it. You were here to be reminded that you got out of that door and you got to go back to your kids and you got to listen and dance again to Whitney Houston with them. That is all that matters. This door means nothing.
So it's literally like we're standing there just talking, having a meeting, and then, half a second later, chaos is broken out.
Brian Sarver is in charge of the Fifth Third account for commercial real estate firm CBRE. He was in a meeting with colleague Rick Newcomer when gunshots rang out.
My back was to the shooter when the event actually started. I was the first person shot, so I didn't see anything, right? I just heard a loud pop, really, from what I remember.
You said your instincts kicked in as to what to do.
Sure. So I had been in that lobby several times, and I had actually I'd ate in the potbelly space as well. So I'm very familiar with the layout of the floor plan.
That is what saved Sarver's life. He knew where the exit was. With the sound of gunfire all around, he went straight for that door.
As I dove down the stairs, I'm literally going down on like my stomach, like you would slide down a water slide. And I remember standing up, I'm like on a platform kind of in between the floors, a stairwell in between the floors. And I saw, and I looked up because I remember thinking he's up there somewhere in the lobby, and I see Rick kind of hobbling down at the same time.
Rick Newcomer was also shot. Both men were bleeding and in pain when they came to another door. Rick, in one of his final moments, helped them escape.
He swiped, his badge got us through the door. We kind of helped each other get through the door, and I remember we pulled the door shut because we're like, I don't know if he has access to this door or not, but I'm gonna shut the door.
The men were found by workers in the basement loading dock.
Did you think you were going to die?
Oh yeah, I did. I remember saying some prayers in that lobby again, like, just like, God, if you can please get me through this, help me to make it through this.
Sarver was shot in the side. A bullet passed right through his spleen. Newcomer was shot in the chest. He died that day.
Rick and I had worked together for just a little over a year, but I mean, he was a close friend of mine. I have to pray for his family, that they're healing as best as possible, and hope for the best for them as well. That's really I can't explain what happened, obviously, and I think about that a lot too. I'm like, wow, I got the opportunity to walk away from that when others didn't.
Sarver and his wife Lisa live in Warren County. They have a daughter and twin boys who he gets to coach in football.
When you stand on the sidelines and you see your boys out there, do you think about that being a moment that might have been taken away?
Yeah, exactly.
Not just for you, but for them.
Right, exactly. And I usually do think of it more in the sense of them, right? I think of, my kids could have not had a father, right? And how that would affect them, the rest of their lives, really. I said a prayer for me to stay here. I got the opportunity to do so. So I got to make the most of it.
On September 6, 2018, Richard Newcomer was in a work meeting with Brian Sarver and one other contractor in the lobby of the Fifth Third Center. Newcomer was a superintendent with Gilbane Building Company. A Cincinnatian to his core, Rick worked in construction around the city for more than 30 years.
And that he built this city, that the buildings that we live in and work in, he helped construct.
Rick was also a husband of more than 35 years, a father and grandfather. His family describes him as a big kid at heart who always put others before himself. Prithvi Raj Kandepi was a 25-year-old engineer from India. He came to Cincinnati 2 years prior to live in the land of opportunity. He was a consultant for Fifth Third Bank. His work in America provided financial support to his parents and family back in India. In Kendepi's culture, at the 1-year mark, it's traditional to hold a dinner and invite family and friends, as well as hold a puja, a religious ceremony in his memory. Kendepi loved his family and friends and the game of cricket.
I'm Ana Calderon. I was the wife of Luis Felipe Calderon, one of the victims of the Fifth Third Bank.
My name is Natalia. My dad is the one that passed away in the Fifth Third shooting a year ago.
I'm Andres Calderon, and I'm the son of Luis Felipe Calderon.
He applied for Fifth Third Bank, and he got the job, but he had to move up there for that job. It was his dream job, and actually before the tragedy, he was approved to move down to Miami this year around February. I was at the office, and obviously I was in shock.
I knew something was wrong at the moment because she wasn't usually serious. I can tell when she cries, and like I saw her from a distance and she was crying, so I knew it was something with my dad.
Life has to go on, and it's really tough because sometimes when you realize that he's in here, it's pretty bad. It's when reality check hits you, it's really, really bad. And I know for my kids has been really tough as well.
I try not to think about it that much so I don't get as sad.
What I love most about him, it was his jokes, his laugh, he stayed calm with any situation.
We would always go to restaurants in South Beach or in Coral Gables, and when he lived here, we would go every Sunday to brunch.
I remember him as being strict, like strict. He wouldn't let me do anything if I didn't have his permission. But he was also really funny and really fun to be around. And his company was really good. I can't learn from anyone else how to talk to girls, how to be a teenager, really. And I don't know who to ask.
The loving father that he would always put me and my brother first before anything.
And his daily calls, they were the best.
His hugs.
His kisses and his hugs and his everything.
Thinking of him, of not having him there, is really hard for me because I always pictured him there with me. And through every milestone, every little thing that I go through in my life, I just want to be able to tell him and him be proud of me and him congratulate me, just like thinking that I'm not gonna have someone to walk me down the aisle, like, which is a tradition. Having your dad walk you down the aisle, and just thinking of that obviously makes me sad, but I have to stay positive and know that I'm doing everything to make him proud.
We give a strength to each other. I know we do. But sometimes you break and sometimes you miss him so badly.
I was walking out and I thought I heard active shooter, so I kind of like grab it and dip my head to it as I'm turning it up, and then it came out, it said there was an active shooter.
Deputy James York, assigned to the Hamilton County Courts Division, jumps into action.
So I immediately ran to my cruiser and got in my cruiser, pulled off, and hit my lights and sirens.
Cincinnati police officer Al Staples, also on routine patrol near Fountain Square, hears the dispatch.
I wouldn't think that somebody was going into an office building just to fire a shot. So I thought maybe a robbery. So I was thinking coming in from 5th Street would be I would see somebody running across maybe with cash or something like that.
Officer Staples runs towards the bank lobby and sees a woman on the ground.
She looks at me eye to eye and says, "Hey, you have to help me. I'm married and I have 2 kids and I want to be a mommy again." Mine was stay down.
That woman is Whitney Austin, an executive at Fifth Third, a wife and a mother. On the other side of the building, Deputy York tracks the gunman.
As he came across this way, I brought my M16 up and I got my bead on him, but I didn't shoot because right on the opposite side of him by the windows were the Cincinnati officers.
Cincinnati police officers fire, shooting through the glass, the bullets hitting and killing the gunman. Law enforcement rushes in to the horrific scene.
Checking that victim. Yeah.
3 people die. Bullets hit 2 others. A wounded Brian Sarvers dove to an exit door to safety. Whitney Austin, who suffered 12 gunshot wounds, lives thanks to the quick response from police.
Another officer, Darren Hoderline, helped me pick her up out of the bed of glass. And then he actually took my spot, and I helped Whitney over to a marble flagpole. While another officer was with me, Sergeant Kara Grace, she was putting on the tourniquet. As people were still trying to approach, we still had to keep people back. So stopping the bleed could have helped save her life.
Yellow crime scene tape wraps around the heart of our city, Fountain Square.
You can just see something or hear something, and it'll continue to play in your mind.
30 years is a long time to be a police officer. Was that the hardest day on the job?
Yes, that was the one that will be remembered for the rest of my life.
I'm not a hero. I know 5 officers from Cincinnati that are heroes. I just did my job. They just did their job.
It was like a regular day, a Thursday.
That morning, I was doing my daily routine.
As I was descending into Cincinnati off of 71, I joined another conference call.
I was in the lobby. I was actually in a job meeting.
I came up through the glass doors at the Westin.
And I remember thinking as I crossed 5th Street, watch out at the crosswalk.
Heard a loud pop, really.
Then I started hearing these cracks, rapid fire cracks.
The sheet of glass in front of me was shattered, but it was still fully intact. And so I thought, well, that's kind of weird. Maybe somebody threw a rock at the door.
People are going to their offices and they're dressed in business attire, and they were literally falling down on the ground, putting their briefcases over their heads.
Kind of luckily, the way I was standing, there was a stairwell towards my right, and I basically just did like a nosedive down those stairs, as I continued to hear gunfire.
Pushed with my right arm into that revolving door, and instantaneously that's when I was hit by the first barrage of bullets.
I was walking out and I thought I heard active shooter, so I kind of like grab it and dip my head to it.
The scanner traffic came in and the desk notified us to get down there as quickly as possible.
And they said Fifth Third on Fountain Square, Walnut. I got out of my cruiser, deployed my M16, racked it in. I heard some shots, so I sped up a little bit. As I was going up the steps, he was coming my way and turned around, so I got on my radio and I said he's going towards the front. I went up and I grabbed the door, put my head down, took a deep breath, brought my weapon up and went inside.
As I'm diving down those stairs, I continue to hear him shooting.
Myself and another officer went in from 5th Street.
I started to cough up blood. I knew that wasn't a good sign. In that moment, was convinced I was going to die.
I saw Whitney on the ground, and she was in that revolving door.
I looked at him and I said, I need you to save me. I have a 5- and 7-year-old at home, and they need their mother.
And then I ended up seeing Rick come down that second set of stairs towards me. He's got his badge in his hand, and then he swiped. His badge got us through the door. We kind of helped each other get through the door, and I remember we pulled the door shut.
After I heard that one was secure, that there's no more shots being fired, I said, this is our time.
And Louis is the way we call him. He didn't answer his phone. So I started calling him, I started texting him, I started looking into the news.
It's under a circumstance like this, you just want to tell people, here's what it is, here's what we know, here's what we don't know.
The first thing you see is just glass and a lot of placards.
I kept my hopes up until my brother-in-law called me like around 4 again.
There were police lines, there were standing guard, and people had already started bringing flowers.
One lesson is to be thankful for our cops and first responders for their heroism, and that in a world where we see this kind of evil, that we also have to point to the good, and the cops are the good.
I think it's right to remember something like this, not to give it glory, but to remind people that we're civilized and we don't buy that.
When you have 2 teenagers and 2 kids, you have to be strong for them, and you have to try to move on as normal as you can.
I'm going to work in the very city that this happened, and I'm going to work in the very building that this happened.
I did go back to Fountain Square. Matter of fact, her dad and I went back and looked.
I am so lucky. We are so lucky. We got everything we wanted out of this situation. I got to go back home to them. This is an entirely different conversation than those families that had to, talk to their kids about losing a loved one on September 6th or any other violent act across America.
Is anything going to change? That's the most depressing thing. That thoughts and prayers, nah, doesn't work.
God forbid, I hope it never happens again here. I think we've had our taste and we're good in Cincinnati.